This is Project Aza. I'm Aza, and today is the second session. It's April 5th of 2026, and it's currently 11:42 p.m. Let's start. As imperfect beings, existing in sequential time, lacking capacity for a full macro perspective on good and evil, how should we navigate through life? Or is everything subjective and we can't hold anyone accountable? Because you see, nowadays, it's pretty common to hear people approaching these concepts as if they were completely subjective. There is your way, my way, what's good for me might be bad for you, and that's life, you have to get used to it. That sounds really superficial. Still a layer, but a superficial one though. Because you see, whenever we are going through a tough period, we expect other people to put themselves in our shoes. We expect other people to empathize. Now, how would that even be possible without them having something they could relate to? How would that be possible without something being able to transcend the individual experience? It wouldn't. Just because we are dealing with complex concepts which definitions are not closed because that would require to have a complete picture, a full macro picture. And we don't have that, and probably, I don't know, we'll never have, at least by while we have this form of life. We are finite beings. And just because those concepts do have a subjective compound to them, that doesn't mean they are completely subjective. And this type of speech is highly dangerous because it has been used throughout our history as a way to justify atrocities committed against other people, against life in general. It is being used right now. So we should think twice and be more careful. The thing is, I can imagine this way of thinking as being a consequence of unorganized priorities. I'm not saying we shouldn't look into what good and evil are. That would be crazy. I'm not saying we should stop working on definitions. We have been doing that and we have been doing a pretty good job. What I'm saying is now we should take a step further and we should study something that's right beside that. For example, when you're writing a paper, in order to facilitate your life and the person's life that has to read it, it's recommended for you to formulate a research question. It will serve you as your compass and it will serve as a way to establish boundaries, limitations to your paper. And you learn right away that a bad question can ruin your paper. That question is supposed to tell you what you're going to study. It's supposed to show you a path you will walk on. Best case scenario, a bad question will cost you a bunch of time, which is just the most precious thing you have. Now, what if we are asking the wrong question? What if the issue does not rely on not having full defined concepts of evil and good, but on what makes an individual, independently of their background, their time, their civilization, what makes an individual truly believe that their actions are good or evil? What if the answer we should be looking for does not rely on those well-defined concepts, but on a conduct, on a way of being? For example, Socrates, he lived through, well, a long time ago, and I'm talking about the philosopher. He lived in the 5th century before Christ, so you can imagine that they have a completely different way to go about life, regardless of where you're watching this from. But the point is that If we try to analyze that period of history through our current lenses, we're going to find a bunch of things that appear to us some as good and others probably as horrible. The thing is, some of those were defended and followed by pretty intelligent people by today's standards. Were they evil? What about those that truly believed they were doing something good? But now we are with our lenses, we are like, we have a different approach, and our approach tells us that you're wrong, you're evil. Is that how it works? Are we the first ones to be good? Is good and evil something that is defined by the perception of future generations? What if the next generation comes and tells us that, look, my friends, the previous generation verdict, wrong. We need to start over. Imagine that. That wouldn't be evolution because we are moral beings. We have a moral compass. And that also goes through an evolutionary line. And just because we are some steps ahead from our ancestors, that doesn't mean what they did was subjective. And what if we are focusing way too much on the action, as if good and evil relied on actions, as if it doesn't start way before that? It does start before that. Now, I believe Socrates understood this clearly. If an individual truly follows the truth, genuinely wants to follow the truth, using virtue as their compass, their intentions will serve as a shield against evil actions. And the key word here is genuinely, because this means your heart is fully convinced that whatever you're doing, you're serving the highest good. It's not a matter of convenience. There's no room for hidden agendas. There's no room to make other people's lives a living nightmare unless you're completely mentally unstable. And as we have seen before, no mentally stable person would want to do that to somebody else. And let's explore that and say that mentally unstable people do not have enough discernment to be in certain positions, which means that they shouldn't be in positions where it's given to them the power to influence other people's lives, especially at some large scale. That's crazy. And whenever they are off track, because that can happen, they apparently started good, I don't know, whatever the case may be. Whenever they are off track, we need to take them out of the seat. This is not a football club. Anyway, we should be a little bit more like Socrates and grow a spine. Because, for example, as Plato mentioned in the Apology of Socrates, ultimately, Socrates didn't even care if the gods were on his side. He didn't even care if they agreed with him or not, because he was completely convinced that he gave his best. He had lived the best life he could with what he had. And this stance right here of not bending and this stance of trying to live a virtuous life cost him his life. They made awful accusations against Socrates and tried to make others believe that Socrates was an awful man, an unfair man that tried to corrupt the youth. And more than wanting to see him gone, his enemies they wished to see him deny what he believed in, wished to see him deny a virtuous life, the truth. Supposedly, there was this offer on the table that allowed him to survive. He would have lived in exile if he had denied his teachings. And he refused. He died. No. As many people say, and I do agree, even though he died, history made sure that he lived through centuries upon centuries, and right now we're talking about him. We are using him in such a beautiful way, as a reference, as a role model. And of course, we need to keep in mind that Socrates was an intellectual giant of his time with a sharp intuition. And whenever we want to use these great minds as role models, we need to understand that saying things as, I think, it's my opinion, I'm entitled to, it's not enough. You have to reason. We have to ground our ideas, to debate with our own beliefs in order to check if they actually make any sense, or if there's a better way to go about life, if there's an upgrade in the system. The problem is that this is really difficult to do whenever ego is in command and not the truth. Because you see, Socrates, even though he was pretty intelligent, he didn't idolize his intellect. He didn't idolize his image. He lived by the truth using virtue as his compass. And this stance right here allowed Socrates, regardless of what he did and our perception right now through our lenses of his actions, allowed him to be considered by today's standards a good and fair man. And he didn't know everything. So, what I can conclude from this piece of thought is that a good set of values combined with some well listed priorities and an intellectually honest mind is the path we should walk on, is the best strategy to go about life, to explore things outside of the cave, to make sure that we are good, that we make good decisions, that we try our best, regardless of what someone 2000 years from now calls good or evil, regardless of what someone from other civilization says about us. That's the best way, the best strategy to experiment things outside of the cave and try to get closer to the truth. I'm not seeing any best way, to be honest. Well, this is Project Asa. I'm Asa, and today was the second session. End of recording.